Hello and welcome to episode 2, season 2 of the Knit Run Dig podcast. I probably got that round the wrong way, but it doesn't matter, does it? I'm Sam, and you can find me as Stealth Dragon on Ravelry and as Knit Run Dig on Instagram. I hope you've all had a good week. I'd like to say thank you so very much for all your wonderful and lovely, warm, welcoming comments from people who've left comments on YouTube and on Instagram. It's so kind. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be back, and I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm glad to be sharing my knitting with you, and I've had an idea. I'll talk more about that later. I should warn you, I'm feeling a little bit odd today. I don't know whether it's the weather because it's been really windy and rainy, whether I'm tired because I did something a bit mad last night, which you'll hear about as well in a minute. So I've got, as usual, I've got knitting, I've got spinning, I've got finished objects for both of those. And I've got shop news, which will be at the very end. As promised last week, I shall be talking a little tiny bit about textile history in the history section. So let's get started, shall we? Or shall I? I'll start with my knitting finished objects. As I said last week, I have in fact finished my Christmas socks. Unfortunately, I can't find my sock blockers, so I can't remember anything today. So these are the finished socks. Let's hold them the right way up to start with. That would be good, wouldn't it? So these are Dragon Hill Studios Sherborne Sparkle 4-ply in the O Tannenbaum colourway. And I don't know how well this shows up, but they really have got a nice sparkle, and that the white stripe in between the red and the green has also speckles of blue, red and yellow for Christmas lights. And I use the CPCTC pattern to make the heel. So I knit these toe up on a 2.25mm needle because that's what I had available at the time. So you can see that the heel has gusset increases, as I mentioned last week, and I'm very glad I got those finished. So that's the finished knitting project I have for this week. And I said last week that I had a cowl project that I wanted to get started, but of course I didn't. I started 2 new projects, neither of which are a cowl, and so I will show those to you now. The first are some more socks, which are right next to me. And so, talking about the mad moment, last night at about 11:30, I thought it would be a really good idea to, number one, start some new projects. And whilst I was doing that, I thought, let's look through my existing patterns and see what I want to knit. So make myself a folder, a real folder of Q patterns. And that led to another idea, which is, I'm going to call it UFO Thursdays, but it can be any day of the week for you. And I actually stole the UFO club idea from a group who who contributed to a quilt project I was involved in a couple of years ago. So what my plan is to have, for me, a Thursday is going to be my works in progress day. And that can be anything from knitting, spinning, crochet, weaving or sewing. So 5 sort of crafts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a project and try and work on it on a Thursday until it's finished. I've got no idea if this is actually something I'll stick to, but I'm at least going to give it a go, and I'd love it if you could join me, hopefully, and we can encourage each other that way. So I'm not sure whether I'm just going to, as I said, I'd like to stick to just one project, but the likelihood of that isn't very high, so I'm going to have a couple of projects, maybe a sewing project and a knitting project that I can work on a Thursday and share my progress on a Ravelry group I'll set up, and also on Instagram. And so I'll set up an Instagram. Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing anything on Instagram, and I'll post it under the hashtag UFO Thursday. And I look forward to seeing what you have. And as I said, I'll set up a Ravelry chatter thread. And in a few weeks, I'll probably, after Christmas, I will have a prize draw. And then this is going to be something that's going to continue on alongside any other knit-alongs I might decide, or spin-alongs that I might decide to do. So that's the mad idea I had at 11:30 last night, whilst deciding that I had immediately to cast on 2 projects. And not did I just have to cast them on immediately, I want to get them both finished by Christmas. Now, one of them I might well get done by Christmas, but the other one is a little bit bonkers. But having two, I mean, I think it's somewhat less than halves my chance of getting at least one of them done, because of course I'll probably decide I want to knit on something else next week. So this is the first thing I cast on. So I did finish the socks, and so I thought, well, let's do some Christmas socks, some more Christmas socks, because I really enjoyed doing them. So the yarn I'm using is West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the Hollyberry colourway, which is one of their Christmas special colourways. And I'm doing them toe up, but the pattern I'm using is Vanilla Latte socks by, I've got the pattern here, I'll just check her name. It is Virginia Rose Jeans, and it's a pattern from 2012, and it's great because whilst I'm doing the toe up version, because this is for someone with big feet, so I'm going to do an afterthought heel, and I'll do them toe up to maximise the yarn, and so that I can probably have contrasting heels and possibly even contrasting cuffs, depending on how much cuff I can get out, because I like to do long cuffs. So yes, I've just started the patterning. I don't know how well you'll be able to see. It's a very straightforward pattern with a 2-row repeat. Nice just to break up the plain stocking stitch round and round, but something I can take around with me. This is the yarn. I caked up the yarn. It comes in a ball, but I caked it up because I prefer it that way. And I also would like to comment on the needles I'm using. I've been catching up on podcasts recently, and I've been watching the Knit Girls, and Laura has been using these. Now, the UK version, I don't know if it's for Europe or just for the UK. Let's see, that's better, I think. These are the Addy Novel needles, and they have sort of square, well, I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see, but it's more like little sections that are flat with the round needles, and they're very nice to work with, and the yarn fits over really nicely, and I think it's making my stitches more even. I think it's quite hard to tell, especially at a tighter gauge, but these are the 2.5mm needles, and I think I seem to be getting a nice fabric with that, so I would recommend giving these a try. These are a similar price to your usual Addy needles, and I think they're really nice to work with. So that's the first project. I cast that on last night, and I worked on it a bit today. So that's that one. And now for the other project I cast on, something a bit different. It's a shawl, a big shawl using big yarn. So it is the Decemberist shawl by Melanie Berg, who is Maryland on Ravelry, and I've buried it under lots of things. I have knitted just a few rows, I think 4, plus the cast on and the setup row. So of course it's all curling up and you can't see, but that is a shawl, I promise you. That's the beginning of a shawl. The yarn I'm using is Drops Andes in this lovely light mauve colourway, and I will show you a picture of the shawl. Let's just see, there we go. Actually there's a better one in here. There we go. So it's a nice big, it's got a huge wingspan, but given that I didn't spend very long on this, I think it's going to grow quite quickly, though I'm sure I'll probably it'll take me a while to cast off. I'm using 7mm interchangeable circular needles, and I'm really enjoying it so far, and I also hopefully that this will be a gift, but we shall see. These may well be a gift for some nebulous time in the future, but I would like to make some progress on those. And of course, because I started 2 new projects, that meant I didn't knit at all on the Soldotna crop, but I did do a little bit on the that side. On the Lundey Mittens pattern, I knitted a few more rows. I started the next repeat. So I've got more of the wave pattern on there. And whilst looking at the other mitt, I think I've made an error. I'm pretty sure I have. In that I have put in an extra row of waves below the puffins. So I'll just have to make sure I do the same on the other mitten, because I'm not unravelling this one. Otherwise I'll never finish them. They'll just languish there for years. So that's the Lundey Mittens by K M Bedigan. And I'm using Jamieson and Smith Spindrift yarns, and I think it's a 2.75mm needle. I think last week I mentioned I'd switched to DPNs, but I'm actually now back on the circulars, the 2.75mm circulars, because I got fed up with wrangling all those. They're nice needles, but I just found them a bit slippery for this project. So that's the mittens. I'm still working on those, or the mitts. And it's horrible. It's horribly cold, windy weather at the moment. So these are just exactly what I want to be wearing. So hopefully I'll finish those as well. So that's all of the active projects I have on the needles at the moment. I'm not crocheting anything at the moment. I haven't crocheted anything this week, and I'm sure I've got a shawl in progress that has been grabbed and run around with by my darling dog. He is a wonderful dog, but he does like knitting projects. Though actually he does seem to not steal them as much now, she says. We'll see. We'll see. So maybe I've just learned to hide them from him. And because I'm a crochet novice, I'm not so good at reading where I am in a pattern. In fact, I'm not that great in knitting. So as you can see by me adding an extra row in my colour work bit there. So I might have to tink it, frog it. It's not tinking, is it? It's frog it, and just start again. But hopefully, once I finish this Decemberist shawl, that'll go back on the hook. So now for spinning, and as I mentioned earlier, I have another finished spinning object, a finished spinning object. It's still damp, but it's very soft and I'm very pleased. So this is the Shamu Makes. Let's just see if you can, yes, there we go, it's focusing. Bluefaced Leicester. And I got 360 metres of a 2-ply. And I split it into thin strips. So I wasn't matching up the colours, but it's come out like a fractal spin, as you'd sort of expect really with it, but all of it in thin strips. So and because the colours are muted, the barber poling, for me it isn't quite as obvious, but I have got barber poling, but I've also got these lovely minty green, let's just see if I can find a nice sort of minty green areas. There we go, and then some more purple areas. And the top that I'm going to knit the Magpie Tendency sweater out of this with, I'm going to spin another variegated but darker yarn to go with it. And I think it's going to be, I'm going to match it with a top that's this colour. So I'm very pleased with the match there. So hopefully I will get the next one done. Not immediately, because I decided I needed to knit something chunky and something in a more autumnal warm colour. So I'm actually spinning, and because I'm not paying very much attention at the moment, I'm not especially pleased with how I'm doing, but I'm trying to spin a chunky 3-ply out of this absolutely gorgeous, come on, it's focusing on me instead. Oh, there we go. So it's holding it too close. Bluefaced Leicester and Silk blend from Owl About Yarn in the Autumn Walk colourway. So you can see it's got oranges and reds and browns in it, but there's also flashes of this gorgeous warm yellow here, as you can see, and I've just divided it into 3, and I'll just do a traditional 3-ply with that. So that's the spinning I have for this week. So that's all of the fibre crafting I've been doing this week. I've been doing a little bit of paper crafting as well. I'll probably talk about that in a future episode. But so now let's talk about the textile history. It's only going to be a very short section. So what I'm going to be talking about this week is Binden. It's a wool craft, and probably I don't know if it was done with any other fibres, and it's a precursor, as far as we can tell, to knitting and crochet. As far as I know, crochet is a much more modern craft. There's debate about when knitting started. It's probably, I think the first evidence is late medieval. Of course, the problem with textiles is that they don't survive very well unless you've got very dry or anaerobic conditions, which means there's no oxygen, so that the fibres themselves can't decay and rot. And you might also find examples pressed into ceramics, or in some very rare cases just like mud patterns. So, and I don't know if you can see, but we have a new friend. This is Phryne. She's the newest member of the household, and she is a tortoiseshell British, just a domestic short hair. And she loves cuddles, and she was very tiny when she arrived, but she's not now. And her best friend is Merlin the dog. So all you can see is Phryne, but she's lovely, and she really likes cuddles, which is wonderful. So this is the Binden. Just trying to find the spot where this, as you can see, Phryne's just wants cuddles. Come on, I had it in focus earlier really well. Come on. There we go. So it looks a bit like I-cord, and for something that's knotted around your thumb with a needle, which is how it's made, so you can see it's looping, which is like knitting and crochet. It's very stretchy in one direction that way, but not so much that way. But it's nowhere near as firm as I thought it would be, because I think there are far more variables in the tension of Binden, because there's not a standard size of loop, because it depends on the person who's created it, thumb size, on the needle that they used, on the yarn. But this is a sample. I didn't make this, but it's lovely, and I'm definitely going to have a go. I've got this book, which is Binding, which is the Scandinavian name for it. And it's got lots of fantastic photos of how to do it. And I'm a visual learner, so looking at pictures of how to move your hands works really well for me to learn a new textile craft, or a new stitch, or a new cast off, or whatever in knitting and crochet. So I'm looking forward to having a go with that. You can get the needles on Etsy, and there are some preserved examples of the Binding. So there are things like slippers, which they were found in York, and some Viking finds. So I think, and they seem to be found across Britain and Scandinavia. And this book itself is in English and another language, which I can't tell what other language it is. It's a Scandinavian language, but that's as far as I'm prepared to go. It doesn't say the country it was printed in, or so it could be Danish or Swedish or Norwegian. But there's a clear Viking link to it, and it's done with a needle, which you can be out of bone or wood. And you can buy these needles, beautifully handcrafted needles, on Etsy if you want to have a go yourself. So that's my little bit of textile history, just to show you actually a different thing close up, rather than looking at photos. And for me, it was just nice to feel the stretch in the fabric, and I like the way it looks. I think it'd be great making a nice thick warm fabric for mittens, or for hats, or for pot warmers, or all those sorts of things, or even slippers. So maybe I'll be showing you some works in progress and finished objects for Binding. So that's the end of the regular podcast. Phryne is still on my lap, purring away. And so I'll go on to shop news. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I will try and edit out some of the pauses and just general confusion. I'm just feeling a bit peculiar today, so hopefully it's just the weather and I'll be fine later. Maybe I just need a good night's sleep. So, well, thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing and hearing your reading your chatter in the Ravelry group for the Unfinished Objects Thursday or Insert Day of Week here. And I will start, I will pick out a couple of projects and show you. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention was another idea I've had, which is kind of related to the Unfinished Objects Thursday, which is whilst I was looking for the patterns for the socks and the shawl, the Decemberist and the vanilla latte socks, I was looking at some of the patterns and I thought, I know, why don't I make a folder, a real folder of the patterns I want to knit, rather than my virtual queue. So I think what I'm going to do is favourite things that are in my queue, so I've still got a record of what they are, but put the things that are in that folder in my queue and see how well I do along in knitting them. And in future weeks I'll probably share more of what's in the queue. So again, thanks for watching, and I apologise for the randomness. There's going to be more of that in the future, I'm really sure. And look forward to chatting with you all next week. Have a great time. Bye! And so now here's the shop news. I said last week I'll be showing you the fibre because I've started dyeing fibre. I've only got a few colourways at the moment. I've also got some blended fibre, which isn't in the shop yet. I'm not quite sure whether I can sell it on Etsy. I will need to look into that a bit more. But I will show you, I'm calling the fibres by Knit Rundig, and of course a puffin on the label because puffins are the best birds. And that's actually a mosaic I did myself of puffins. So the first two colourways aren't in the shop yet. I don't think I'm going to have daylight. I think it's going to be horrible weather for the next while. So these are going to have to be photographed under artificial light. But if you're interested, I can take photo. You can, if you want to see more closely what the colours are, I will do my best to take them. If you send me a message on Etsy, I'll do my best to take a photo in natural light. So the first one of these, I keep fondling it, is, I've called it Summer Berries, and it's a 70% bluefaced Leicester, 30% kid mohair blend. So a nice wintry blend. It would be nice and great for mittens, and it's a sort of purples and pinks and magentas. So that's the first one. And then the next one that's going up very soon, this is a Shetland fibre, 100% Shetland, and this is Sunset at Caesar's Camp, which is based, so you can see it's got dark blues, oranges, almost blacks, dark purples, and this is based on some photographs I took on a sunset walk with my dog up at Caesar's Camp, something else I'll talk about at some point in a future podcast, which is a nearby hill fort on the Surrey-Hampshire borders. Those two will be going up in the shop within the next few days, and these ones are up in the shop already. So the first one is called Chawton Poppies, and it's inspired by some beautiful white, pink and red poppies that are in Jane Austen's house museum garden at Chawton in Hampshire. So you can see that it's the orangey red and pinks, and this is 70% merino and 30% bamboo. So I really like the way that the bamboo doesn't take the colour. And then this is 100% Shetland from Shetland, brought back from Shetland by me in my luggage. And this is Summer in the Country. And this is actually superfine Shetland. So this is a yellowy sun and the green grass and the blue sky with, of course, clouds, because we most often have clouds. So that's the Summer in the Country in Shetland. And then the final one is also on Shetland, and this is 100% Shetland, and this is colourway Nebula. It's got my favourite teal and purples. So that's my dyed fibre. I really love colour, which is why I started dyeing fibre, and I started doing a watercolour painting class nearly 2 years ago now. My paintings aren't great, but I just love the way that watercolour works and the way that the dye, it's an unexpected, I would say for me, it's an unexpected process. Because that's the way I choose to dye. I like the interactions between colour and the way different colours move differently and draw. Some colours push other colours out. I'm sure I'm not making any sense, but just the way that different colours have different react differently than you might expect, and the way that you can mix colours to create your own. So that's all I've got time for. That's all I've got for you this week. Thanks for watching, and again, have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, bye.